Look at your hand. It's holding a fork, a phone, a cup of coffee. Now look at a chimpanzee. Same ancestor, same deep family tree. But that chimp will spend 6 hours today just chewing. 6. Grinding through raw leaves and stems with a gut twice the size of yours and a brain a third the size. Something split us apart. Something gave you those extra hours, that smaller gut, that enormous, hungry brain. And a growing number of scientists believe it all comes down to a single, world-changing act. Fire. Cooking. But here's the problem. Nobody can agree on when it happened. And the gap between the best guesses isn't a few years, it's over 1 million. This isn't just a question about food. It might be the question about how we became human at all. Because your brain is a monster. It's only about 2% of your body weight, but it burns 20% of your energy just sitting there, doing nothing. No other primate pays a bill like that. Theirs use about 9%. So how did our ancestors, scraping by on raw plants and scavenged meat, ever afford an organ that expensive? One scientist thinks he found the answer, and it starts around 2 million years ago with an ape who did something no animal had ever done before. He tamed the flame. His name is Richard Wrangham, a Harvard professor who spent years watching wild chimpanzees in the forests of Africa. And he noticed something haunting. When those chimps found raw food, they'd chew and chew and chew, jaws working like machines for hours. Then Wrangham looked at us. Small teeth, weak jaws, a tiny stomach, a body that seems almost badly designed for eating raw food at all. And he asked a dangerous question. What if we're not built to eat raw food because we stopped a very long time ago? His answer became a famous book and a bombshell idea. Cooking, he argued, is what made us human. Heat breaks food down before it ever reaches your body. It unlocks calories that raw food keeps locked away. And with that flood of easy energy, our ancestors could suddenly afford the impossible. A bigger brain, a smaller gut, more time in the day. Wrangham traced it all back to a creature called Homo erectus, nearly 2 million years ago. It's a beautiful theory. There was just one thing missing. Any proof that Homo erectus could actually make fire. And that's the crack the whole story falls into. Because fire is a ghost. Think about it. A campfire burns for a night, and by morning, the wind takes the ash. Rain washes away the char. Give it 1,000 years, and there's nothing. Give it 1 million, and you're chasing smoke through solid rock. So how do you prove someone lit a fire when the fire vanished before the pyramids were even dreamed of? For a long time, we couldn't. And every time someone claimed to find the oldest fire on Earth, another scientist tore it apart. Was it a hearth, or just a patch of dirt scorched by a lightning strike 100,000 years before any human walked by? The evidence kept dissolving in people's hands. Until, deep inside a cave on the edge of the Kalahari desert, someone found something that wouldn't wash away. The place is called Wonderwork Cave. And in 2012, a team led by Francesco Berna went 30 meters into the dark, far past where any wildfire could reach. There, sealed in ancient sediment, they found it. Burned bone. Ash from plants. Not blown in. Not washed in. Burned right there, on the spot, roughly 1 million years ago. It was the first solid, undeniable evidence of fire inside a human home. And it was old. Old enough to make Wrangham's theory breathe again. But 1 million years is still not 2 million. The gap was smaller now, but it was still there, taunting everyone. And to close it, the story had to leave Africa and travel to the edge of an ancient lake in the Middle East, where fire wasn't the discovery. Dinner was. The site sits in Palestine, and it's called Gesher Benot Yaakov. 780,000 years ago, it was a lush lakeshore, thick with reeds and giant fish, and people lived there, around fires they tended so carefully that traces of the flames survived through the entire time they lived there. But in 2022, a team studying the site noticed something bizarre in the fish remains. They had thousands and thousands of fish teeth, but almost no fish bones. where did the bones go? The answer is quietly astonishing. When you cook a fish gently, its soft bones break down and disappear, but the hard teeth survive. So the researchers took those teeth into a lab and looked at the crystals inside the enamel. Because those crystals change shape depending on how hot they got. A raw tooth looks one way. A tooth burned in a raging fire looks completely different. And these teeth? They sat right in between. Heated, but not scorched. Warmed to the temperature of cooking, not the temperature of a bonfire, it's the oldest meal we've ever found. 2 giant carp, caught in a lake, cooked with control, nearly 800,000 years ago. But even this stunning discovery came with a warning. It's still one site, one reading of the evidence. And there were scientists who thought this entire 2 million-year story was a fantasy. Because there's another camp, the skeptics. And their argument is brutally simple. Show me the hearths. 2 researchers, Will Robrooks and Paula Villa, went looking across all of Europe for the real, undeniable, everyday use of fire. Not one lucky campsite, a pattern. And what they found was that habitual fire as a normal part of life, only shows up reliably around 300,000 to 400,000 years ago, not 2 million. That's the honest, uncomfortable truth at the heart of all this. The boldest theory says cooking is nearly 2 million years old. The hard, physical proof of fire as an everyday tool is barely a fifth of that age. So who's right? And here's where the fog finally started to lift, because scientists stopped just digging and started using something new. At a quarry in Palestine called Evron, archaeologists had dug for years and found nothing burned. No ash, no char. Case closed, no fire here. Then a team fed the stone tools into an artificial intelligence, trained to see heat damage invisible to the human eye. And the machine saw what we couldn't. Some of those tools had been heated to over 600 degrees. Fire had been there all along, nearly 1 million years ago, and we'd been standing right on top of it, blind. Think about what that means. If the fire was invisible at Evron, how many other sites are hiding the same secret? How much of human history has been erased simply because we couldn't see it? The evidence wasn't gone, we just needed new eyes. And then, at the end of 2025, came the discovery that shifted the whole fight. In England, at a site called Barnum, a team uncovered baked earth, cracked stone tools, and 2 tiny fragments of a mineral called pyrite, the kind of stone that throws a spark when you strike it. Pyrite that doesn't occur anywhere near that place. Someone carried it there, on purpose. Because this wasn't fire they found by luck in the wild. This was fire they made. Around 400,000 years ago, a human being knelt down, struck 2 stones together, and summoned a flame out of nothing. The lead archaeologist called it the most exciting discovery of his 40-year career. And it draws a line most people never think about. There's a difference between using fire, stealing it from a wildfire and keeping it alive, and making it, on command, whenever you're cold or hungry. One is borrowing, the other is power. So, when did we start cooking? Here's the honest answer. We don't know, and anyone who tells you a single, tidy date is selling you something. The truth is a fight that's still burning. The boldest voices say 2 million years, written in the shape of our bodies. The cautious ones say 400,000, written in ash and stone. And every few years, a new tool, a microscope, an algorithm, a fragment of a fish tooth, drags the answer somewhere new. But step back, and the thing they're actually fighting over is staggering, because whenever it happened, something extraordinary followed. Our guts shrank, our jaws softened, and our brains swelled into the most complex object in the known universe, an organ so hungry we could never have fed it on raw leaves and cold meat. Try it, and your body pays. People who eat only raw food, even today, with blenders and supermarkets, often grow thin, and many women simply stop menstruating, the body quietly deciding it can't afford a child. That's how close to the edge we live. That's how much we depend on the flame. So the next time you turn on a stove, without a second thought, remember what you're really doing. You're repeating the oldest trick our species ever learned. The one that may have lit up the mind now reading these words. We didn't just discover fire. Fire, in a strange and beautiful way, discovered us. If this rewired the way you see that glow on your stove, wait until you see what we did with the very first thing we ever cooked.